Are you tired of spending too much of your hard-earned money at the supermarket? Are you dreaming of farm fresh eggs, homegrown veggies, and homemade everything? Well, welcome to Ditch the Store, where we break free from supermarket dependence and take back control of our food and household essentials. I'm CJ, and I'm here to show you that life is too short for store-bought eggs. So let's get started. G'day everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ditch the Store. And we are well and truly immersed into goat months. And today's episode is kind of timely because we're currently awaiting the kidding of Poppy, who is one of our very favouriteest goats. I think the handy helper, we always say we don't have favourites, but I think Poppy's probably pretty close to his favourite. So episode 134 this week. And we are talking goat kidding basics. Now, before I start, I should say you could talk for months about goat kidding. There are so many different aspects to it, and there's so much detail. So this is very much a basic episode about goat kidding, and I may, depending on how things pan out, I was almost going to extend the goat months to 3 months instead of 2 months worth of episodes, only because there is so much to cover, and I don't think one episode does kidding justice, but we'll crack in. I won't waste any time talking about baby goats that I'm currently milk feeding, etc., bottle feeding, but we'll crack in and see how we go. But I may have to do a second episode to cover off on all the other questions that people would have. So this is just a basics. Now, I also should give a disclaimer. I am not a vet nurse. I'm not a vet. I don't have any formal qualifications in medical, birthing, anything like this. Everything I'm speaking about comes from experience. And so far we're into our 8th year of kidding. And we've had our fair ups and downs. I've had dead kids. I've had dead mums. I've had perfectly healthy. I've had singletons that were huge babies. I've had triplets several times. And I have been milking my goats for that entire time. The whole purpose of me breeding my goats to kid is so that I can milk my goats. That's the whole point behind it. We're not breeding goats for pets. We're not breeding goats purely for meat or for fibre. It is primarily for milk, and the others are just an add-on and a bonus. So that being said, there's many things that could be questions that you'll have. If you do, send me a message, send me a DM, and I can always do another episode on questions that I didn't cover that people needed covered. So I just said the only reason that I breed my goats is to ensure that I have milk for the following year. We'll go through that in a second, but there might be a lot of different reasons why you're breeding goats. You could be doing it for meat, and all power to you. We sell our wethers, our boys. They go for meat purposes once they're fully grown, because we don't intend to keep everything that we breed as a pet. I can't think of anybody that would have enough space to warrant breeding continuously and being able to keep every animal that they bred. So the realities of what we're doing is that boy goats who are not able to breed because they're not purebred, and I don't keep any of my boys entire. That's something for breeders to manage. I'm not a breeder of purebreds. I think there are far too many people that leave goats entire because of a whole bunch of reasons, but primarily it's, I don't want to put a band on their balls, that's going to hurt them. Yes, it is, and they could potentially hurt you in a year's time when the testosterone is flowing, it's rutting season, and you don't have enough girls for them to service. So lesser of two evils in my opinion. But feel free to disagree with me. My way is not the only way. I just have no need to keep entire goats that I would then have to manage the behavioural aspects, not to mention the smell aspects of a rutting male goat around children, around other animals. I've seen bucks break a leg of a year-old wether in their haste to try and get to girls and take out their aggression. So I really don't find that there's any benefit to keeping all of the boys entire. Having one entire buck on the farm is more than enough, and I don't even do that anymore. But we'll talk about that in a second. So we breed for the purposes of generally getting more milk, but you could be breeding to produce meat goats. You could be breeding to produce more fibre goats. Whatever it is that you're breeding for, please don't just breed just for the sake of breeding pets. There are more than enough pet goats out there, and you likely will have to give them away or pay somebody to take them because there are more goats than there are wannabe owners. So don't go into it thinking you're going to breed pet goats. Now, the best time to breed is generally late summer, early winter for a spring birth. Now, a goat's gestation period is 150 days, which is 5 months roughly. And spring is the best time for them to be producing their babies. Unlike sheep breeders who try and breed, I think they try and breed so that they're, in most cases, the lambs are arriving in the dead of winter. We don't try and do that. We try and do it so that they are coming in that kind of springtime, like very end of winter, early spring. Now, if you live in a warmer climate, so people in Queensland, Northern Territory, Upper WA, or if you live in places like Florida, Alabama, Arkansas, places like that, Texas, you could breed pretty much whenever you like, depending on when your girls are coming into season. And different breeds do it at different times. But you could absolutely do it earlier. A breeder that I am aware of, that I have some contact with, who is up in Queensland. She's far north Queensland. She breeds, her kids arrived 6 to 8 weeks ago, and mine are only just arriving now. So she's a full 2 months ahead of me, and she is a commercial milking setup. So she breeds once a year for the purposes of milking, and she weans, the kids come straight off the mothers because she's a commercial situation. We don't do that. Now, so spring birth is a really good time for the babies to arrive because of climate. And also because it's generally, goats don't have a cycle the full 12 months of the year in most cases. I won't say in every case, but in most cases. Ideal age. Now, in the books, they will tell you from 8 months on they can get pregnant, and they absolutely can get pregnant. Willow and Hazel arrived to me as 10-month-old goats who were both 3 months pregnant already. So they'd got pregnant at 7 months. So 8 months they absolutely can. What they suggest is they need to be 70 to 80% of their adult weight. Now, what I have found from breeding one goat too early, so it's not a great cross sample of stats, but I don't like breeding them too early. I would actually rather them be over a year old before I send them to the buck or get them pregnant, so that I know that they are absolutely fully grown when they're going into kid. Now, Poppy last year did not get pregnant. So she's actually 2 years old. She's coming up to 3. She'll be 3. God, I can't remember what her date of birth is, but it was around September. So she'd be just about 3, and she's kidding for the first time, and she's just about ready to go any day now. So I have no problem leaving them an extra year. Commercial meat and dairies don't wait that long because for them it's about the dollars. It's about bringing them the income. So no diss on them in that regards. But if I can afford to wait longer, I will. Now, early pregnancies can cause some long-term health issues, and that's part of the reason why they say 70 to 80% of their adult weight, because a small doe will have more problems kidding than a larger doe will. And when I say larger, I mean in fully grown size, not in weight. Weight is a different thing altogether, and bigger is not always better. But just because a doe is in heat, that doesn't mean she's ready to become a mum. And I say that very strongly because I have seen doelings who are under 3 months old having a heat cycle. Now, you don't want to breed a 3-month-old goat. Yes, their body and their nature is telling them that they can be pregnant, absolutely. But if you don't want problems down the track, I would suggest that you hold off and don't breed a 3-month-old goat, and you aim for it to be at least 12 months old before it's breeding. But what you have to consider is if you're breeding for milk, when do you want to be milking? So the reason we leave it till September before they kid, or we time it so that they're going to kid in September, is because August here is still really cold. It's September here now and it's freezing outside even though the sun is shining. So we don't want to be getting up at 4 or 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to milk goats when it's icy and freezing. That is no fun for anyone, not least of which us. And the handy helper and I just aren't into getting up early in the morning in the freezing cold anymore. Are you hoping to sell the kids? So if you're thinking about selling the kids as bottle babes, so to somebody before they're fully grown, then spring and summer is obviously a better time to do that. People are going to be more inclined to spend time with the animal and be prepared to manage the upkeep during the warmer months than during the colder months. Now, or are you breeding to refresh genetics in your herd or to produce more stock for your herd? So you might have Angora fibre goats and be breeding specifically to get more fibre goats. Now, fibre goats have a very limited, well, here in where we live, have a very limited window of kidding season. Their rutting season is very short compared to the milkers. The milkers can come in and out of season over a 5-month period if they're not pregnant. What I've noticed with my Angoras is the window is about 3 months. And if they're not pregnant in that 3-month window, they don't come back into a heat cycle. So you have to think about all those things. And the best way I can say to do it is to get a calendar, work out when you want the kids to arrive. So when you know, don't do it around like I have done in the past, had them kid and then the next day had to drive to Sydney for a wedding. So look at your calendar, make sure there's nothing major on. You haven't got weddings, there's not anybody's due to have babies, you've not got some major event that you have to attend, and then work 5 months backwards from that to work out exactly when you want your kids to arrive. And then you have to work out how you're going to get the doe pregnant, because there can be differences there too. If you're trying AI, accept the fact that they may not get pregnant the first time. They may not even get pregnant the second time. With a buck, the chance of them getting pregnant the first time is really high. Poppy not getting pregnant last year was an anomaly. Most goats get pregnant the first time they go to the buck. Now, speaking of bucks, you have 2 options, or you have 3 options really, but 2 primary options. One is using a live buck, having a buck that services your girls, so that it goes over the girls, gets the girls pregnant, and the buck is on site with you. Now, that could be a buck that you own and keep for the entire year yourself, or it could be a borrowed buck from somebody else. But I'll go through. So the pros about keeping a buck is control of timing. So as soon as a girl is on season, you can time it and get him straight over. So that is a win-win as far as her ovulation cycle being spot on, but also sperm is best when it is fresh. That is the most potent sperm you're going to get, is fresh straight out of the buck. So, and the thing is, if she is still showing signs of being in heat the next day, you can take the buck back in there and let the buck go over her again. So the chances of you getting her pregnant on that first heat cycle are very high. That's convenient then, because you don't need special equipment, you don't need to pay anybody, you don't need to go anywhere, you just literally walk the doe to the buck paddock or vice versa. I would suggest doe to the buck paddock, that's what we always did. And like I say, fresh sperm is best sperm, and it's going to be more chance of getting her pregnant first go. The cons. So for anybody that's not smelt eau de cologne of buck, it's an unusual smell that you just really kind of can't get away from. Bucks, when rutting, are like deer in that they, I think deer do it. I should actually check. I don't know, but deer smell. I know deer smell when they're rutting. Bucks smell when they're rutting. And the reason they smell is because they piss on their head. Gross as that sounds, people, that's what they do. And the reason they do that is their urine contains a pheromone smell, a hormone, that is attractive to the lady does. And by peeing on their head, they're basically scenting themselves and saying to the female goats, have a smell of me, I am surging with testosterone and hormones, and I am ready to be your buck and get you pregnant and produce the best kids you've ever seen. That's essentially what they're doing. But the smell is horrendous. You can't get downwind of them without gagging. If you're handling them, you literally need to come in and scrub with Solvol or some kind of grainy soap to get the smell out of your skin. There have been occasions where the handy helper and I have been peed on because we've been standing downwind of a buck who's just decided that he needs more of his cologne on to make himself beautiful for the girls. And the wind's picked it up and we've got goat pee on us, which stings. It's horrid. Now, they can also be aggressive in the rut. I was very lucky. Rocky, my old purebred Anglo-Nubian buck, he was the most calm and placid buck I have ever dealt with. He was never aggressive, even during the rut. He was always so super calm. I have had other bucks. The buck that we used this year, who we dispatched after we'd used because he was an accidental buck. We didn't intend to keep him as a buck. The band broke on his testes, so he ended up not being castrated. We kept him only this year because I didn't have a buck and I needed to get the girls in really quickly because we were going to miss that window of opportunity. He was super aggressive. The buck that we had prior, so Lucy's, one of my good girls, Lucy's dad, was a buck that I borrowed off my mum. He, again, was an aggressive buck. So it's hit and miss. Two for one for me, one that was beautifully natured and two that have been horribly natured. And that's something that you need to factor in. If you're going to keep a buck, you need to have secure fencing, especially during rutting season. You also need to be aware of dogs, children, anything that could end up in the paddock with them that the buck could then become aggressive towards. You really do need to be mindful and not let anything in there. The buck won't differentiate between your kids and somebody else's, or a dog and a dog that's your dog or somebody else's dog. They just see everything as a threat. Excuse me. Good fencing, good shelters. You need to have a paddock buddy for the buck. Bucks, they're like all goats, are herd animals. They don't like being on their own, and being on their own will make them more aggressive. So for Rocky, he always had a paddock buddy, and it was just a wether who was always a beautifully natured wether as well. So that's a male goat that's been castrated. And we always had a paddock buddy for him so that he had somebody to eat with, cuddle up with, do herd things with. That's what they need to keep them as calm as possible. Now, it doesn't always work. One Nut, as we called him, which was the buck that we just dispatched, he had a paddock buddy the entire time and he was still an asshole. He was just a bastard of a thing. So it doesn't always work. You do also have to factor in feed. Now, bucks don't generally eat any more than any normal goat, except during the rutting season. During the rutting season, you probably have to up their food. They expend a lot of energy doing what they do. Some people would say best job in the world. They spend 10 months of the year doing nothing and 2 months of the year having sex. But they expend a lot of energy, and you do need to feed them. And you need to make sure that they've got the right amount of nutrients in order to produce the best quality sperm that they can. So you can keep a buck. You just got to be prepared for the stink, and it's not for everybody. Borrowing a buck off somebody else. Now, a lot of people won't loan bucks, and that comes down to a lot of biosecurity issues where they don't want their buck going onto somebody else's property and potentially coming back with a disease that they're then going to give to their entire herd. So, but if you have a neighbour or a family member who trusts that you have a healthy, clean herd, then you might have somebody who's prepared to lend your buck. I've never done it this way other than, I guess I have. The first buck that we had, I borrowed off my mum, and I borrowed him for 2 years and then sent him back to my mum. And I think my mum basically allowed her girls just to have a 2-year break because all of her girls had been continuously breeding for some time. Now, that's obviously cheaper because you may just have to give them a couple of bales of hay or a couple of bags of feed towards the use of the buck. But it's very dependent on the availability of them lending you the buck. So if they've got girls that they're trying to get pregnant, they may not be able to give the buck to you, for longer stretches of time. And you also have to trust that their buck is healthy because their buck could be carrying diseases, which he then would bring over to your girls and your herd, and you don't want that. Now, artificial insemination, which is your other alternative. And I recently did a course in artificial insemination for goats. After we lost Rocky, I I'm convinced that I'm not going to go with having a buck again. It is hard work, and even though we have the space here, it means having a completely separate paddock that is only utilised by the buck, and then trying to rotate him through paddocks so that we don't have parasite loads. And the parasite load was the issue that we had with Rocky. He became sick with Barber's poleworm, which is a really hard parasite to get rid of. So we made the decision for me to do an AI course, which I did do, but that doesn't come without its own problems. So it is expensive to do the course. It's expensive to have the equipment. It's expensive to buy the sperm and keep the sperm. You need nitrogen tanks to keep the sperm, which you can hire from places, things like that, but all adds up. And the real issue is it can be very hit and miss. So I think on the course they mentioned stats of around 50% uptake rate. So there's a 50% chance that your goat will get pregnant. Now with cows with AI, using artificial insemination, they can get pregnant usually around the 90% mark. So that's a huge difference between goats and cows on the uptake on the AI. And it has to do with a few things. One, frozen sperm is never going to be as good as fresh sperm. So, and they showed us on the course, they actually showed us fresh sperm sample versus a frozen thawed sperm sample. And the difference, you just couldn't believe it. Like the amount of activity looking through a microscope, it was insane how much the fresh is best. But if you're going to go down that route, you need to have a nitrogen tank. You need to get a reliable source of sperm straws, semen straws, in order to artificially inseminate your does. And you need to go through the courses that you can do. And there's a course, it's in Victoria for anybody in Australia that's interested. The ladies that run it are based just probably an hour out of Melbourne. And I flew down there and hired a car and drove out there, did the course, and then flew back the same day, which was insane. But by the end of the day, I was well versed in AI. It was a very hands-on course. They get you to actually go through the process of artificially inseminating does. Now, it does require training. It's not a perfect system. And like I say, it is expensive. So you've got to pick the lesser of two evils for you. And obviously next year, I didn't have time to get a nitrogen tank and semen straws this year without missing that window of opportunity. So next year will be our first year of AI, and we are going to go full steam ahead on it. And hopefully the handy helper's determined to buy really good semen straws. He wants moon spots. He wants Lucy to have a baby with moon spots. So that's what we're aiming for. Now, goat pregnancy. So it's a 5 months pregnancy. It's 150 days. And there may be things that you will not notice right in the beginning. So it's a bit of hit and miss as far as are they pregnant. Now, when we do AI, I will be sourcing and testing some other ways to see if they are pregnant. You can do blood tests, but that involves more equipment and, a lot more effort and a lot more knowledge and things like that. My understanding is that there are urine sample test kits that you can use that are very similar to a human pregnancy test, where it's like a dipstick into urine and it tells you whether there is the hormone present that indicates pregnancy. So I'll be looking into that, and as soon as I've got information about that, I will let you know. But usually about the 3 month mark, you can start to tell if they are pregnant. So around the 3 month mark, you'll notice that they start to eat a lot more, and they'll start to expand in the stomach a lot more. Now that doesn't always happen. I mean, Lucy at the moment she went to the buck very late, and because she didn't get in the first time with the buck that we were using. I don't think Hazel's pregnant this year. She is not putting on any weight at all. Her appetite has not increased. Lucy, on the other hand, her appetite has increased, and she is just starting to expand a little bit, and she's around the 3 month mark now. So for her, there is a chance that she will kid. I think I worked it out, first week in November she would be due if she did get pregnant. And so her expanding waistline now would fall in line with that. But the one thing that you can really look for, and you won't know this until, kind of at the 4 month mark, is 6 to 8 weeks before they kid, their udder will start to develop. And when I say develop, it depends on the doe. Some does will just, especially milking breeds, will just have this massive udder, and you can feel the milk veins going into the udder under the tummy, and they start to walk with a bit of a, waddle because they've got so much udder there. But some does don't develop an udder until 4 weeks before, some 2 weeks before. I've had them still looking, going, oh, I don't know whether they're pregnant. And then all of a sudden, boom, they get this massive udder fill. And once the udder is full, then you know that they are definitely pregnant. Milking goats without hormone injections or hormonal stuff added to their system don't produce milk. They only produce milk if they're pregnant, because it's the pregnancy hormones that make their milk supply come on. So belly will change. They'll get much bigger. And I'll try and include some photos this week of Poppy at the moment. She's expanded a lot in the last 2 weeks. So we know she's close. She's out there grunting and groaning at the moment. She can't get comfortable. She keeps pawing at the ground, which are all early pregnancies, all early labour signs. But I'll take some photos, and I'll try and find some old photos of Hazel when she was pregnant with triplets. She was enormous. I kept looking and going, she cannot get any bigger. And then I'd go out the next day and go, oh my God, she's bigger again. So their stomach does expand really quickly, especially in that last month. They'll also have some behavioural changes. Now, it's very different with every goat. So Willow, who was quite standoffish with everybody, when she was close to the tail end of the pregnancy, the last 2 months, she would get incredibly cuddly. You'd go into the paddock and she would come up and lean on you and almost try and climb up onto your lap. And she's a 50-kilo goat. Like, her trying to climb up onto your lap was just insane. But she'd get very, very clingy and very cuddly and want pats all the time. Some get quieter, which... Hazel tends to get very reserved towards the end. She pulls back a bit. She doesn't really want you around her. And some get bossier. And Hazel and Princess, one of my Angoras, definitely fit that bill. They get snappy with everybody. It's like they're over being pregnant and they just take it out on everybody else around them. Poppy, who hates her stomach or udder being touched, always has, even though I've handled her right from day one, touching her udder to try and encourage her for when she becomes a milking goat. She still hates me touching her udder, but the last couple of days she's let me touch her stomach. She's let me feel for where the babies are and things like that. And in the past she always hated it. So that their behaviour just changes a little bit, their personalities change a little bit, and it can go either way. They can be really standoffish and avoid you, or they can be all over you. But the only way to really, really confirm if your doe is pregnant is a blood test or an ultrasound. So like I say, the blood test comes with its own set of costs and equipment. The ultrasound does as well. Actually, an ultrasound would be awesome to have out here, because then you could see how many they're having as well. So that might be something that I need to look into, whether or not it's worth getting. But there's Doppler machines as well you can put on their stomach, and sometimes you can hear heartbeats. It would probably only indicate with goats whether you had a heartbeat, so you wouldn't know how many. But with an ultrasound, you'd usually be able to tell and see if there's more than one baby in there. And with milking goats, twins and triplets and more are quite common, so you have to be prepared for that. Now, feed changes in the last couple of weeks, and this is where we went wrong with Sage. We lost Sage 2 weeks ago now. Actually, it's just over 2 weeks ago. We lost Sage. Just under 2 weeks we lost her. And the reason that we lost her was pregnancy toxemia. And I will go through in the health episode that I do about different things. But pregnancy toxemia is essentially their body is struggling to function because it's giving everything to the babies. So they'll go off their food. They get depleted in nutrients, so they're not getting enough nutrients for their body to keep functioning, and they start digging into their own reserves. Now, I didn't realise Sage was doing this because we feed in a herd environment, and she wasn't due. She wasn't due until this week. So I kind of was sitting there going, oh, hang on, she's not due. So, she's fine. She hasn't put on that much weight. She was looking a little bit skinny, and I was starting to hand feed. I was starting to put the pellets. We've got lactating goat pellets that we give them in the lead up. But I had hay coming in we were buying bulk amounts of hay because we've been hand feeding through winter because of the drought. And so we were using the hay that we were getting in to feed her, the problem was it wasn't lucerne hay. It was Rhodes. And Rhodes is fine normally, and for any other goat it would be, but for a pregnant doe, it just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough nutrients in it. And I didn't realise that she was actually going off her food. So what happened was, and it can go one of two ways with them. They either go down and don't kid, like go down and just stay down, and then they're just depleted of energy. Or in her case, she kidded early. So she kidded a full week, at least a week earlier than what I had planned. And certainly judging by the size of the kids, it was definitely a week early. They were very undersized. They didn't have teeth. They were fully haired. They had full hair. So it wasn't too prematurely, but they were definitely preemie. They were too small. Anyway, we gave her calcium injections, which usually are enough to start to bring them back. We're giving her calcium injections, but we also think, and I'm trying to think what the other thing, so the pregnancy toxemia had depleted her glucose, and we also feel that she had milk fever straight after she had the babies because she was trying to produce milk for them. And so we ended up giving her calcium for the milk fever, which is an injectable that I get from the produce shop. And the vet gave me a glucose syrup to give them, but the glucose syrup comes with its own set of problems. So she had a vitamin B1 injection, but it was probably 24 hours too late to give her that injection, but we gave it to her anyway. The vet gave it to me. And the glucose, but the problem is giving glucose to goats can affect their rumen's ability to function. And once a goat's rumen stops working, it's really hard to bring them back. So you can give them the vitamin B1 injections to try and increase their appetite, to make them eat. But in her case, she was too far gone. So she couldn't get back up again. She didn't have enough energy to get back up again. And she ended up passing away a couple of hours after I'd given her the vitamin B1 injection. So she went downhill very, very quickly. And it does happen like that. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where if you don't get on it the second that you notice it, and we didn't know, so we were late to the party anyway. But I just thought she had premature kidding, and I didn't even think about it as far as milk fever or pregnancy toxemia. I just assumed that she'd kidded early and there was a problem in that respect. And when she did kid early, one of the kids was not well when he was born. Cookie, I thought he was dead when I found him because she kidded out in the paddock because we didn't know she was due. Like she went early. And the little girl, Cream, was fine. She was up bleeding and carrying on and trying to drink off mum. The little boy, he couldn't stand up. We literally had to hold him on the teat. So both kids managed to get 24 hours of colostrum milk out of their mum. But then that depleted her energy probably even more. And if I'd known, I probably would have been better off just feeding them a different milk to try and give her a chance to boost back up again. So late pregnancy, probably about 6 weeks out, you want to make sure that you're feeding them good quality lucerne hay. For my American friends, I think you guys call that alfalfa hay. They really need to be getting that. It has a much higher calcium mineral content, vitamin content in it. And so you need to be feeding that to them to ensure that they are not draining their own resources and that they're getting enough nutrients in to not only allow the kids in that last 4 weeks of growth, the kids really grow, their hair grows, their bones grow, they strengthen, they put on weight, and it depletes the mums if they're not getting enough nutrients. I also 4 weeks out start feeding lactating goat pellets, and the lactating goat pellets are there because they have all the nutrients that a milking goat needs to produce milk. So my theory is by feeding the lactating goat pellets and the good quality lucerne, I am covering off on all the things that they would need, not only to grow their babies, but to produce milk and keep themselves still happy and healthy and growing. Now, it's really important not to have a fat doe. So size is great, size is amazing, but you don't want an overly fat doe because overly fat does have a harder time birthing and kidding than a doe that's just slightly, not underweight, I don't want to say underweight, but at an optimal weight range. You don't want them underweight, you don't want them overweight, you want them bang in the middle. So don't overfeed because goats will keep eating If you keep giving them lucerne hay, they will keep eating lucerne hay. Now, it's great for their guts, and like I say, it's got lots of nutrients in it, but overweight does will be harder. So, preparing for kidding. 150 days later, after her 5 seconds of pure enjoyment with the buck, your doe is going to be ready to kid. Now, that being said, I will put a link in the show notes to the doe code, which is an episode I did months ago, a year ago, maybe. The doe code is real. Goats, it's like they pick and choose when they're going to actually have their babies. You can be 150 days bang on the button and they'll go to 152 or they'll go 148, or they pick when they're going to go. Now, things that may occur for them to go. If you have a sudden drop in barometric pressure, goats tends to promote labour going in. The other things are, if you are all dressed up and about to walk out the door to go to a wedding, christening, a dinner, a special anniversary, and you're all dolled up to the nines, beautiful clothes on, you've done makeup, done your hair, you're about to get in the car, that is the precise moment that your doe will go into kid. And I'm not shitting you. It's like they know, and they just hold off until they, can make it as inconvenient for you as they possibly can. So I'll put the link to the doe code episode in there. Go and listen to that if you're thinking about having goats and kidding, because it's a real thing. And that's, I just block September and October. I say to people, we've had one wedding 3 years ago in October, and that resulted in me losing a doe to mastitis. Not because of the wedding, but I ducked away to deal with the wedding, to be at the wedding. And by the time I came back, she'd gotten worse, where she was improving before I left. So you can't win. So I just block out September and October and go, I can't do anything. I can't be anywhere. There's nothing important that I can be at. I have to be able to just deal with goats during those 2 months. Now, your kidding kit, what you want to have ready is clean towels. And by clean towels, I mean towels that you're not going to use again probably, because it doesn't matter how much you wash them. There's still going to be marks on them from goat poop and afterbirth and things like that. Lots of clean towels. I also get the dog puppy pee pads, and I use them to put under the does when they're actually kidding, not while they're up and down, but when they're actually pushing the baby out, I'll slide one of the puppy pee pads underneath them. And it just helps keep the kid clean enough so that I can go through and check and make sure everything's okay. Gloves and lube. Now, I've got to be honest, I've given up on gloves. I take my ring off that I wear and my watch off, and I make sure that my fingernails are all nice and short and clean. And I will just put a little bit of lube on my hands and just go in barehanded. And the reason I do that is because I just can't sometimes feel, if I have to go in, I can't always feel, is that a nose? Is that a hoof? What am I feeling or seeing or touching? So I don't bother with the gloves anymore. But that being said, do not scratch your face or your eye after you've had your hand in a goat's vagina. It's going to end in tears. So just be mindful of that. Always have a big bottle of, like an old Coke bottle or old milk bottle full of water to wash your hands with after you've touched the goat. Iodine or navel dip, I actually don't use this anymore. I did in the beginning. It's supposed to promote a nice, healthy umbilical cord healing. Some people swear by it and are adamant that you have to use it. I've got to be honest, my girls always clean their babies up. So even the two that we've just had, Sage didn't clean them up. The boy was just dumped in dirt. I thought he was dead. So she hadn't cleaned him up really. And his cord has dried up and looks beautiful and healthy, and there's no issues with it. But some people will swear by it. So it's up to you if you want to err on the side of caution. A little bit of iodine. It's like a wash that you can get that you just put like in a little cap, and you dip their umbilical cord in the dip to try and promote a sanitary cleaning, a sanitary wound site. A bulb syringe. Really handy. So anybody that's had kids, bulb syringes are the things that you stick up their nose to suck the mucus out of their nose if they've got a snotty nose when they're a baby and they can't blow their nose. I kept mine from when my kids were little, and so I use that now. So it's just a rubber bulb with a tube on the end of it, and you blow all the air out of it, like you squeeze it down and push all the air out of it, stick it into their mouth or nose, and then let go of it, and the suction effect pulls any snot or crap out of their mouth or nose. You can also just stick your finger in to clean crap out of their nose, out of their mouth. Sometimes they have like a little soft palate thing in their mouth, and you can just flick it out. But if you don't want to be sticking your finger in their mouth, or you've got really big hands and you think I'm going to hurt them, then a bulb syringe is handy to have. And it is handy to have in the kidding kit anyway. Molasses water for after labour. Now, this is the funny one. People always say, oh, you have to give molasses water after. My goats hate molasses water. They literally can't stand it. Other goats I've heard of love it. The only reason for giving it is that it gives them a little bit of a sugar spike. It gives them, they like drinking it. There's a little bit of a sugar spike to it. It doesn't really do anything for them medically. So if your goat doesn't like molasses water, don't stress. Give her a couple of pieces of carrot, some apple, whatever she likes afterwards. Just have some of that on hand. Give her that. Give her pellets. Give her lactating pellets. Whatever she likes to eat, just give her some of that to give her a bit of a boost. But make sure she does have access to fresh water, because once their milk comes in, they need a lot of water to keep it going. And you can have a notebook there to record things. I don't bother. I now just take my phone with me. I set it up on a tripod so that if there's anything I need to go and look back at afterwards, but also too, I like to post the videos up so people can see what the process of kidding looks like. Sometimes there's problems, other times there's not. But what I will say is, people talk about having to go in and help a doe kid. I have had to actually help 3 times out of maybe, I want to say 50 plus kiddings now. It'd probably be close to 70 kiddings. And I have had to help 3 times. So even the triplets, Willow had her triplets in the paddock without me there, and had all 3 without a problem. Hazel spat out 3, and one of them was huge, huge boy. Spat out 3 of them without me assisting in any way, shape or form. Lucy has never kidded in front of me. I've come home from somewhere, and both occasions that she's kidded, twin kiddings, and I've never been there present for them. Sage the other day had her 2, first time she'd ever done it, had her 2, I wasn't present for it. Goats can kid on their own. You don't always have to help them. I like to be there because I like to watch it. I love the idea of new life coming in. So I like to be there for it, but you don't always have to help. The times I've had to help, a deceased baby that was half hanging out, twice I've had that happen, once with a milking goat, once with an Angora, and I had to pull the baby. So contractions had stopped. The baby, I'd gone to check the doe. She hadn't been in labour the last time I saw her. The next time I saw her, there was a head hanging out, but the baby wasn't coming out. In the Angora's case, the front 2 legs weren't out. It was just the head. So I had to reach in, pull the 2 front legs out one at a time. And then with the help of the handy helper, he held the doe and pushed her stomach towards me. And I pulled in a downward fashion at the back. The baby was already deceased. Pulled in a downward fashion and was able to get the baby out. Now, luckily for us, that worked, because that was the year that I lost Willow, and I rubbed the deceased baby all over Peggy, who was an orphan at that point. She'd become an orphan 2 days earlier, and I rubbed the deceased baby all over her and put her in the kidding pen with the Angora mum. And it's the funniest thing ever. Now we have a pure milking goat who is attached and bonded to this Angora goat. Because Lizzie did the right thing and fed her, and they've bonded, and they've been mum and daughter ever since. Anna, I didn't have a baby to put on her, so I just had to milk her morning and night because she was a milking goat. But her baby was a little boy buckling, and I have no idea what caused him to die. It happens. If you have livestock, you have dead stock, you have to be prepared for these things. Sometimes nature just doesn't let them live. And the only other one that I had to pull was baby Cake, who was an Angora baby. Angoras seem to have very small pelvises, so any baby that's slightly bigger just gets a bit stuck in there. I had to pull him, and I didn't think he would make it. I actually thought I was going to break his leg trying to pull him, and he is now fully grown and ready to go to freezer camp. So he was huge, born, and his poor mum Marie, Marie Antoinette, hence why he's baby cake, I had to pull him out, and it was a 45-minute struggle to get him out, but he came out alive and healthy. But you have to be prepared for the worst. There's other times when I've been there and been watching, even when our cow calved, I was there and watching, and I had to help a tiny bit towards the end, but not really, like she did most of it herself. But you do want to have a kidding area, so you want to have a kidding pen that is secure and kid secure. So it needs to have, either shade cloth all around it so that nothing can get into them, or very tight fencing, chicken wire type fencing all the way around to stop anything getting in. Now, labour. This episode is going to go a little over, folks, because we've still got labour to get through yet. Labour signs, what to expect. Again, I'll put the link in for the dough code. Go and have a listen to that. You'll be very surprised. But labour signs, early labour signs are restlessness, pawing at the ground, trying to make a bed. They'll get up and down. They're very uncomfortable. They might start to vocalise. Some do, some don't. Willow used to lose her voice. She'd vocalise so much. So some of them will cry out, like as if they're in pain. Some of them talk to their tummies quite a bit. That's what Poppy's doing at the moment. She groans and carries on. The big thing that you'll see is there'll be a mucus plug that comes out of their vagina. So they'll lose like a mucus plug out the back, and there'll be a lot of it's almost like egg white syrup coming out the back of them. That means game on. Once you see that, that's when you need to start checking them on a regular basis, because once it gets to that point, it's going to happen pretty soon. Now, they will also stretch and talk to their sides. They'll reach around and maybe bite their bellies and things like that, because they can feel the labour pains happening, and they're sometimes a bit confused by it. Now, pre-labour can last for hours. It can last, I reckon it can last for days, some of them. I used to joke that Hazel would be in labour for like 3 days beforehand, screaming and pawing at the ground and carrying on. And then finally we'd get that discharge plug out and we'd go, yep, okay, game on. Active labour is when they're actually pushing. So they've gone through all of the pre-labour stuff, but when they actually sit down and start making grunting sounds and pushing, that's when it's active labour. Now, active labour, once it actually commences, like once it's game on, it shouldn't take for longer than an hour. Between 20 and 60 minutes is pretty normal, especially for a first timer at the longer end. Once they become more adapted to having kids, sometimes it can be 10 minutes and they're out. Like I say, some of them really quick. So that's why you kind of have to keep an eye on it. But if it's longer than 60 minutes and they're still pushing and not getting anywhere, you're probably going to have a look. Now, you should be looking anyway, and what you should be looking for is a nose and 2 hoofs coming out. They should be coming out as if they're diving out of the back end of the goat. If you can see both front legs and the nose coming out, just have a little bit of a check and make sure that both legs belong to that head. Because what you can sometimes have is 2 goats overlapping. Now, I won't go into all the different positions that goats can come out in, because that's a whole episode on its own. But a normal birth, 20 to 60 minutes once active labour starts. And most of them will do everything themselves. You just need to be there to supervise just in case. And it is a just in case. Most does will manage just fine. And then once they've had their baby, then you have to go through the what they call stage 3 labour, which is when the placenta comes out. Now, some goats will eat their placenta themselves like most mammals, or if you don't want them doing that, you can just go in, scoop it up, put it in a garbage bag and get rid of it. But never ever pull at the placenta coming out. It needs to expel on its own and come out on its own. The goat can do it. They can just push it out. But they need the contractions to do that. Sometimes what I found helps, if it seems like it's taking a long time for the placenta to come, is to get the kids up and feeding off mum. And that's a whole nother story as well. Now, the only times you should be stepping in, like I said, is if there's no progress and you're getting close to an hour, I'd be checking things. Any obvious distress, if they're really struggling and something's wrong, and trust your gut on it. You know your goat. If there's something wrong, have a look. Lube up, check to make sure that the goat is presented the correct way, because malpresentation, which is where they're not coming out the right way, is just about always the biggest issue. That being said, I've watched Hazel birth a breech birth, and she pushed the breech birth out, no problems. I didn't even have to do anything. And there was nothing I really could do. I mean, I can't turn it around once it's already coming out. If you are at all stressed, call your vet. That's the guts of it. If your gut is telling you something's wrong and you don't feel comfortable dealing with it, somebody has to deal with it. You can't leave them and just go, oh, well, they'll do it themselves. If you get past that 60-minute mark and nothing is moving, they're screaming in pain, the baby's malpresented and not coming out the correct way, somebody needs to step in. And if it can't be you, you need to find somebody else who can. What I was going to say was, there was something else I was going to say. And I can't, afterbirth. Here we go. I had it on my list. So, colostrum is the first milk that the mum lets down for the babies. That is vital. It is the thing that will give them immune systems. It will get them a huge energy dump of really high, rich, vitamin, nutrient dense kind of milk. It's quite thick when it comes out. It's like almost like cream, it looks like, but very yellow. And you want to get the kids up and on. Now, in most cases, you can just sit back and wait, and the kids will get up. They get up within half an hour, and they will be reaching for the udder. There are times, particularly with first mums, where you may have to help the kid find the udder. And that's because mum doesn't know what she's doing yet. And she'll turn away from them as they're about to reach to get on the teat. Now, if you have a doe that doesn't want to let the kids on the teat, you are going to have to hold her and force her to let the kids on the teat. People jump in and take the babies off them straight away and go, oh, she didn't want to feed, so I just took the babies. Believe me, you're making a rod for your own back. Don't do it. If you are going to be doing this long term, there are sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. And if it means holding mum up against a wall with one person holding her and somebody else holding the kids up underneath to help them find the teat and get it in their mouth and start drinking, believe me, mum's natural instincts will kick in once that starts happening. Once she realizes what she's meant to do, you will be asleep through the night, not having to get up and bottle feed anybody, not having to get up and check anybody. Mum will be able to do it. And I've never had a goat reject babies completely. I've had them reject them in the first couple of hours where they kept turning away. And once we've held them and forced them to take the baby on the teat, within probably maybe 3 hours of doing it. So they'll only drink tiny, small amounts to start with. 3 hours of monitoring, and then I walk away. And I've never had a goat say, no, I'm not going to feed my babies. They always end up feeding them. So in that first 24 hours, you can dip their cord in iodine if you need to. You need to make sure that they have found the teat and that they're getting on the teat themselves. If they're not getting on the teat themselves, you're going to have to help them get on the teat. And I really would strongly encourage you to do that because it will help you down the track if they're feeding off their mum fine. And then let mum bond with them. Step out of the yard. You know, if you want a video and watch, go for it, but let mum bond with them. Now, there are rare occasions where mums do reject babies. I've not had it happen, but I've had them be pretty, it looked pretty aggressive to start with. Don't panic too much. Kids are very, very adaptable, and they're actually a lot tougher than what you think they are. So don't panic straight away if mum seems a bit aggressive with them. If she's obviously being very aggressive with them and, is not letting them feed and all that, then you might need to step in. But again, I would encourage you to hold her and make her take them on the teat. Once the mum, and it's usually first-time mums that do it. Older mums, they're like, get on. They know what they're doing. But first-time mums sometimes can be a little bit like, oh, I don't want the baby sucking on my teat. Once they get it happening and they realise that it's okay, it's not hurting, it's not, that it'll actually probably make them feel really good. Once that happens, their placenta it'll help shift their placenta because it kicks I forget the name of the hormone, I think it's called oxytocin, in, and that helps the placenta expel as well. But also that the kids will start getting the food in and then they get stronger and then they can feed better and then they get stronger again. It's a catch-22. So they won't get strong until they're feeding. Now, there is a couple of things. Bottle raising versus dam raising, doe raising. Bottle-fed kids are friendlier. They certainly can be very, very adaptable, but it's a hassle. It's like having newborn babies, and that's what we're going through at the moment. It's like we've got newborn babies that we're feeding every 4 hours, and it's killing me. And they're just about to move over to 5 to 6 hour feeds, and I can't wait. But doe-raised kids are always going to be so much easier. So if you can get them onto mum, that is the best way. Now, a couple of other things to think about is disbudding. If you want hornless goats, you need to do it between 3 and 10 days, no later than 10 days. Now, it can be done by a vet, but there are lots of people out there who debud goats themselves using a debudding iron, which is a hot soldering iron that they press into the top of the head where the bud is, where the bud of the horn is, and it stops the growth. That being said, I've given up on it. My goats are horned. We had the vet do Lucy, who is amazingly, she has no spurs growing back, no nothing. But hot iron dehorning sometimes doesn't result in the horn not growing back. The horn can still grow back. So it's up to you whether or not you want to do it. A lot of commercial dairies debud because they don't want the horns in the way. It's a bit of a health risk for us, getting hit with the horn. And believe me, I've been hit with a few. So there is a danger level that comes with it. But I also find it's much easier for me to control the goats if I can hang on to them by their horn. So a vet can do it. It's expensive, or you can have somebody in your local area ask around, see who can do debudding. Vaccinations and worming schedules. You need to think about this going into goats no matter what, and we'll talk about that more in the medical side of things. But one thing I will say is after a doe has kidded, there is a thing called worm bloom, and it can kill them. You need to worm them usually about 24 hours to 2 days, so 24 to 48 hours after they've kidded. You need to worm them if they have. Well, I just worm them now as a matter of course. It's the only time I'll worm them without checking their poop to see if they actually have worms. At the 2 days after they've given birth, I worm them regardless because their immune system changes after they have their kids, and they'll have an influx of the parasites are in their system, but the parasites suddenly get an opportunity to hit again. So I always just worm. Weaning. You can wean between 8 and 12 weeks. Goats, babies will start eating hay almost immediately. They'll start tasting it. But right now, our nearly 2-week-old babies are eating grass and hay already. Not a lot of it, but they're eating it, chewing it, getting it down. So bottle babies, you can keep them. You have to keep them on the bottle until at least 12 weeks, I would say. They say 8 weeks, but I've never done it under 12 weeks. I've always kept them on past then. Even if they're just having one feed a day, you can do that up until about the 16-week mark. Dam raised kids, definitely I leave them on until at least 16 weeks. I won't take them off before then, but that's because I co-share with the milking. Gradual removal is best. You will end up with goats with upset stomachs if you just try and cut them off. So it's always a matter of tapering the amount of milk they're getting down. And that's a good opportunity to watch for any kind of loss of condition or weight, because that's what you don't want. And you need to keep the kids separate for a while after you've weaned them. They will go back to suckling on the teat, and you might think there was no milk there, and suddenly she's got milk again because their suckling will actually promote more milk coming in. So, yeah, if you don't want her feeding them, then you need to keep them separate. They will go back to it. So that's it. I know we went over. We're nearly an hour, so I'll try and end up there. But we'll talk about more medical stuff during a medical episode. But that's the basics of kidding and breeding. And I hope that kind of explains to you what to expect. I don't think anybody should go into breeding goats without knowing at least the basics. And I would say be very conscious of what you're prepared to do and what you're not prepared to do. I am prepared to stick my hand in a goat's vagina if I have to. It's, like I say, I haven't had to do it very often, but I am prepared to do it, and I do know what I'm doing, and I have checked what I need to do to help them. If you're not prepared to do that, you need to find somebody in your local area who can be there when your goat's kid, because you can't leave them. If a baby is hanging out, I saw a post today on Facebook, and a lady had a baby hanging out the back that was deceased, and she said, I can't get the baby out. I don't know what to do to get the baby out. It sounds terrible, but you have to do anything you can to get the baby out. And, in the case of Lizzie with her deceased one, his front legs weren't out. I had to reach in, lube up, reach in, pull one leg out at a time until I had traction. And then the handy helper was pushing her stomach towards me as I was pulling the baby down towards her udder. You don't pull it out, because if you pull it out, you'll hurt her. You want to pull it, because the contractions have stopped, you pull it in a downward fashion towards the udder. And it took a lot of effort. Believe me, it's the hardest I've ever had to pull. And we got him, once we got the shoulders out, the rest of him came out, no problem. He just, that was it. That was once the heaviest bit was out, the lighter bit came out easy. Now, she could have been damaged in that process, but it was a risk we had to take, because if we didn't get him out, she'd be damaged anyway. She'd end up sick. The lady that posted this morning on Facebook that said, I can't pull the baby out, I don't know how, posted back about 4 hours later and said that the mum was deceased. So not pulling the baby actually took 2 lives, not 1. So you need to be prepared to do those things if you're going to kid goats. Anyway, that's it. That's probably a really horrible note to end on, but I just can't stress that enough. Don't go into it if you're not prepared to do those kinds of things. Anyway, we've hit an hour. I'll let you go. You're probably driving to work and going, shit, CJ, shut up so I can get out the car and go to work. And I'll talk to you all again next week. Bye for now. Well, that's it for today's episode of Ditch the Store. If you're loving the journey to self-sufficiency, be sure to subscribe. You can also leave a review for us, or share this episode with a friend who's ready to break up with their supermarket. If you've got questions or success stories, we'd love to hear about them on the socials. You can also find me at www.mojohomestead.net. Until next time, keep raising, growing and making. And remember, life's too short for store-bought eggs.